The night shift at Firefly Systems was all glass and reflections, a spine of neon monitors, the faint tremor of servers like distant rain, and a city that glittered on the other side of the windows, as if it were trying to get in. Inside the war room, people were already shouting, "Kill access to Segment B." One engineer yelled, "It's jumping subnets," another said, fingers skidding across a keyboard. "This isn't a script, kiddie, this is targeted." On the big center screen, a countdown clock pulsed crimson, 0 hours 9 minutes and 59 seconds. 10 minutes until every customer record, every encryption key, every contract. Everything Firefly had ever promised the world gone. At the doorway stood Harlan Cole, 70. If a day, in a scuffed navy jacket with security stitched above the pocket. He held a ring of keys that chimed when he shifted his weight, and a thermos that smelled like black coffee and stubbornness. His hands were big and brown and patient. His eyes kept moving. He knocked twice on the door frame, polite as a guest. "Sir," he said, to the nearest tangle of panic, "you've got your firewall rules stacked backward on the east ingress. You're blocking the folks who might help you and leaving a chapel door open for the devil." A few heads turned. Drew Maddox, the young interim fresh haircut, hungry jawline, a watch that wanted to be seen, stepped forward like a man who had been waiting his whole life to have an enemy he could dismiss. "Mr. Cole," Drew said, smoothing his tie, "we're in the middle of a critical incident." He gestured to the hall with magnanimous disdain. "We don't pay guards to play genius." A couple of engineers smirked without meaning to. Someone snorted into a sleeve. The countdown popped to 0 hours 9 minutes and 3 seconds. Harlan's gaze flicked to the screen, and then to the room. He didn't bristle because he had learned a long time ago that bristling burns energy you need for seeing. He set his thermos on a side table as if he might be back for it, and leaned one shoulder into the door jamb. "All right," he said, as if indulging children. "I'll just be here if this becomes a situation you ain't solved by yelling. Close the door," Drew said. "Please." The door swung inward, gentle and final. Harlan remained on the threshold with the patience of an old tree. "Packets are tunneling out over DNS," cried Ivy, the lead engineer, eyes bright with too much caffeine. "It's masquerading in health check traffic. Then throttle DNS. We do that and the whole fleet looks like it flatlined. Legal's asking if we've notified clients." Someone said, "You notify when you win," Drew snapped. "Right now we fight." On the screen, the clock roared down to 0 hours 8 minutes and 11 seconds. Harlan shifted, keys chimming. The room had a smell he knew from other rooms. Panic, ozone, pride, through the glass. The city went on not caring. "You ain't gonna like this," he said softly. Conversational, like the weather. "But whatever's inside your house came in through a door you keep pretending is a window. Your passwords are iron on the front gate and string on the back porch. Whoever's in there knows your rhythm, not just your rules." Ivy's head whipped toward him. "Who are you again, Harlan?" Drew said in a tone that meant less than he signs for packages and checks badges on the loading dock. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. We've got it." Harlan's mouth flickered like a man deciding whether to say grace at a table. That didn't what Grace said. "Ma'am," he murmured. "That clock don't care about job titles, son." 0 hours 7 minutes and 27 seconds. A fresh window blossomed on the screen, a latticework of characters snaking across logs, splitting, recombining. Ciphertext, Ivy realized, and not the cheap kind. She felt the cold thrill of recognition and pushed it away. It's encrypting as it exfiltrates. She said, "We can't read what we're losing." "Cut the backbone," Drew ordered. "You cut the backbone," Ivy said. "We cut ourselves off from any chance to trace it, then trace it." She typed like a person paying an old debt. Around them, the room breathed in ragged unison, people who had built a beautiful door and left a hinge loose. From the hallway, a custodian's cart creaked by. The woman pushing it nodded at Harlan. He'd fixed the rattling wheel last week, with a twist of wire, and the same conviction he used to fix most things. Harlan tipped to fingers from his brow, a private salute, and turned his attention back to the code on the screen. There it was. He knew it the way a musician knows a favorite chord, by the ache it makes in the chest, not the code itself, no. This was new work by new hands, but the cadence of it, a little flourish at the end of a block. The way a checksum was padded, the odd prime that only people from a specific school used when they wanted a calculation to slide. Just so. He felt time tuck under him like a wave he had not expected to catch again. "Miss Ivy," Harlan said, as courteous as a church usher. "That salsa right there ain't store-bought. Whoever's stirring it learned from someone I know." Ivy blinked. "I'm sorry?" "That checksum," Harlan said, nodding at a segment. "They're seating it with a 257 in the prep step and folding the high bits with a lazy XOR. Looks like elegance. Hides a seam." Ivy stared. "Who are you?" "Old," Harlan said, "and tired of watching good people run out of clock." Drew threw up both hands. "Enough. Security. Please escort." The screen chirped. New text appeared. A message from the thing inside their house. "Nice try. 8 minutes. Backup's next." Someone swore. Someone else laughed the way people laugh at funerals. 0 hours 6 minutes and 58 seconds. Harlan took a step into the room as if crossing a line he had drawn for himself years ago and had promised never to cross. He set his keys on the table. Their sound was small and absolute. "Young man," he said to Drew, "you can have me escorted out after I do this or before. The difference will be whether your company lives." The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when somebody takes the air and shapes it into a sentence you can't ignore. Even Drew flinched at whatever it was in Harlan's voice that did not ask permission. "Let him speak," Ivy said. Harlan nodded, not triumph but acknowledgement, and pointed at the cipher stream. "This looks like a custom block cipher riding your DNS." They lifted an old paper that used a reversible S-box keyed by a phrase you know the type. Cute trick in the 90s. Showed up in certain government kits until we learned better. He smiled without warmth. "Only the key's schedule they're using. It has a tell. If you can guess the salt phrase, you can unwind it faster than brute forcing." "You're saying there's a passphrase?" Ivy said. I'm saying there's a signature, Harlan corrected. Every craftsman leaves one. People who learn under Leland Park use a variant that does a little dance on the 9th round. That dance is right there. He tapped the screen, not touching, just pointing like a man at the edge of a map. I know Leland's students. Ivy's face changed. You worked under Park. Harlan's eyes didn't move. I worked with him. Back when doors were made of paper, and we were responsible for which way the wind blew. Drew scoffed. This is ridiculous. Then bet your company, Harlan said simply. I've already bet enough. He came to the console as if approaching an altar. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, these keys newer than any he had known. And yet the same old song could still be coaxed from them. He typed a small function and then another, hands steady. Work clean. Give me a fragment of the outgoing block, he said. Here's your seam. His code looked like handwriting from a more dignified century. Lines poured down the screen, then slowed. An error. Ivy leaned in. Your modulus is off by 1. Because they want us to think it isn't, Harlan said, the ghost of a grin. Watch. He corrected the step not by adding, but by subtracting twice a trick to catch a thief. Who expects caution, but not audacity? The text stuttered, then unfolded into plain text like a flower deciding there's enough light to open. A list of file names scrolled by customer snapshots, internal keys, contract drafts, and beneath it, a sort phrase repeated in variations across tests. Heliophile, heliophile, heliophile. The misspelling was deliberate, a vanity tick. Harlan exhaled through his nose. Not Leland, he said. One of Leland's boys who wanted to impress him and never did. He looked up. You can trace it now, and you can't stop it. Ivy's eyes watered, and she didn't know why. She typed with both hands. The room sprang like it had remembered what it was for. On the big screen, the countdown rolled to 0 hours 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Shut the DNS tunnel, Ivy said. Rewrite the edge rule to drop any packet with that salt signature. Harlan, Mr. Cole, give me a decoder so we can audit the loss. Harlan built it like he'd built radio kits as a boy. Careful, quiet. Sure. His mouth moved a little as he counted old habit. Older prayer. Drew stood there with anger curling into something uglier. Shame. He swallowed it, or tried to. After this, he said tightly, we still have to notify our legal liability. After this, Ivy said, without looking up, you're going to apologize. Excuse me, to Mr. Cole, Ivy said, for calling him a guard like it was a way to make a man small. The room shifted, people not ready to choose sides, but ready to know which side they'd be on. If they had to. Harlan didn't turn. The code wanted his eyes. 3 minutes, someone whispered. 0 hours 3 minutes and 6 seconds. The tunnel didn't die when they cut it. It splintered. Clever. As if the attacker had anticipated a decent defense and built a better offense. 3 new outbound channels lit up like veins. Block 8537, 8534, and 8529. Ivy snapped. They're bouncing to the same resolver block. They'll try QUIC next, Harlan said. Move your drop a layer down and there. He tapped keys. You'll starve them. The lines jittered, slowed, went thin as hair, broke. Silence until a single ping sounded from the big screen. The countdown stopped at 0 hours to minutes and 21 seconds and stayed there. Then it turned grey. Someone cheered. Too early. Ivy held up a hand, listening to the net the way a fisherman listens to a line. Wait, wait, okay, she exhaled. We've got it. We've got it. The room rippled laughter from some, sobs from one, both the body's ways of emptying out fear. Ivy spun in her chair, eyes shining, and finally looked at Harlan fully. How did you know? She asked. Harlan set his palms on the back of the chair and let his shoulders drop for the first time. All night, because I wrote the first version of what he was bragging about, he said mildly. And because the boy who did this learned from a man I used to argue with until the sun came up. His mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. We all leave fingerprints. Good code is a confession. Drew approached slowly, his face a study in the difference between what a man wants to be and what he is when the light is. Honest, Mr. Cole, he said. The title tasted like medicine. I apologize. I was wrong. Harlan nodded once, more gracious than the moment deserved. You were scared, he said. Scared makes folks say slick things. It doesn't excuse it. No, Harlan agreed. But it explains it. Ivy cleared her throat. There's one more thing, she said, looking at Harlan like a student trying to find the right way to ask for another lesson. Who are you, really? Harlan uncapped his thermos, took a sip, and considered how much past a man needs to carry into a room. Once upon a time, he said, I worked in a place where doors were made out of math. We kept certain people out and let certain people in. And somewhere along the way I got to thinking the door mattered more than the people. His eyes went down to his hands. My boy Andre needed me, and I didn't see the lock I'd put between us until it was too late. He screwed the cap back on gently. So I quit. I picked a job where the door was a door. And if somebody needed help crossing it, I could be the one to hold it open. The room went still in a new way respect. Not hush. Ivy nodded. Thank you, she said, for all of that. The incident wound down the way storms do. Alarms silenced. Phones answered. A slackening in the muscles that had been clenched so long they'd forgotten any other shape. Legal drafted a notification that told the truth. PR polished it without lying. The CEO older, quieter than Drew. Out of town until the flight landed called to say the only sentence worth saying. Thank you. What do you need next? Not a title, Harlan said when the question reached him, and everybody turned because they had assumed that was the prize. Titles rust. People don't. What do you want? Ivy asked. A Saturday room, Harlan said, and a budget for pizza, and a list of kids who think code is a wall with their name missing. He nodded toward the city beyond the glass. We'll teach them the door version first, then the math one. Drew cleared his throat. We could bring you in as a consultant, stock options, a proper package. You saved a consultant is a name on a paper, Harlan said kindly. "I'll be here anyway. I'm here every night." He glanced at the clock, now frozen with 2 minutes of mercy left on it. "And some afternoons, if you put coffee in the break room that don't taste like punishment." A few people laughed, unsteadily, like birds testing air after a storm. "Deal," Ivy said. "Which are also sitting in on post-mortems and teaching my team how to spot that scene you saw." "I'll sit," Harlan said, "and you'll teach me the parts the world learned after I stepped off the road." They shook on it, an old hand, a young one, an agreement that felt like something more than policy. 2 Saturdays later, the first Firefly Saturdays met in a glass conference room with a whiteboard that had seen too many buzzwords and not enough kindness. 12 kids showed up, ages 11 to 16, hoodies and braids and shoes that squeaked. They sat like chairs were a dare. "Welcome," Harlan said, writing hello on the board in block letters. And then under it 0100100101010101010101111. That's the same word to ways. This place is full of 2 ways. I used to think only one of them was worth knowing. I was wrong. He wrote their names as they said them, careful with spelling like it was fragile. He handed out sticky notes and asked them to write one thing. They were sure they couldn't learn. A boy named Malik wrote loops in big scared letters. A girl named Donnie wrote anything, and then struck it out and wrote math with a smaller hand. A quiet kidsy just drew a door. "Good," Harlan said. "Pockets loose, stance easy. We'll start with the things you think are too hard. That way everything after feels like mercy." Ivy came on her day off, hair in a messy bun, eyes softer than they were during incident calls. Drew showed up with pizza and set it down like a peace offering. From a different country, he opened his mouth to make a speech and then closed it when he saw Harlan watching the kids, not him. He took a seat in the back and listened like a man practicing humility until it fit. They built a little cipher together, nothing you'd trust with a secret worth money, but a good machine for learning. Harlan showed them how to break it, then showed them how to break better. And when the room buzzed with triumph, he leaned on the table and said, "That's the trick right there. Don't just build. Unbuild the thing you built until you understand its bones." At the end, Z came up and touched the board with the door. "If I learn this," they asked, not quite looking at him, "does the door open?" "It opens," Harlan said. "And then you build bigger ones and hold them while somebody else runs through." Z nodded like a person taking a vow. News traveled the way good rumors do. By week 4, they had 30 kids and a waiting list. HR found a small budget. The CEO stopped by and did the smartest thing a boss can do when entering a room. "Already working," she said nothing and wrote a check. One afternoon, as the room emptied and wrappers sighed into the trash, Ivy sat next to Harlan on the sill where the glass met the city and asked the question she had not yet dared. "Why did you really leave?" she said, gentle as if waking a child. "From all that," she added, gesturing vaguely at the world where smart people wear lanyards and pretend that's armor. Harlan rolled his thermos between his palms. "My boy," he said, He wanted help I didn't have time to give. I told myself the work was for him. He grew up without me noticing. He looked at his hands, at the keys and the coffee, and the ink mark on his thumb where a marker had bled. I thought brilliance meant never being ordinary. Turns out brilliance means showing up. Ivy swallowed. Where is he now? Good, Harlan said. Better than me at being new. We talk on Sundays. He asked about these Saturdays. I told him it's the best code I've ever been part of. She bumped her shoulder into his. You know, she said, we still have a security team meeting at 4. If you felt like teaching adults a thing, I'll come, Harlan said. But I'm bringing a rule. What rule? No fancy words nobody understands. If you can't explain it to Z, you can't deploy it. Ivy laughed. Deal. They watched the city catch light on 100 little windows. Harlan thought of doors and of boys, and of the way a clock had stopped at 2 minutes and given him back a piece of his life. He put his keys in his pocket and stood. You heading out? Ivy asked. Rounds, Harlan said. Doors still need checking, even the ones we open on purpose. He made his way down the halls that had once looked like somebody else's home. He touched frames with his knuckles as he passed the small superstitions of men who have kept watch too long and have learned the habit is a kind of prayer. He paused by the war room and looked at the ghost of the countdown still faint in his mind, and did not flinch at the loading dock. The evening crew rolled in. The woman with the rattling cart waved. Wheels still holding, she said. It'll hold, Harlan said. I tied it like I meant it. He stepped out into the blue hour. The air had that after-storm clean to it that makes even bad neighborhoods smell like beginning. He tipped his face up and let the dark come on around him and thought about the kids. Who would come Saturday, and the boss who might learn to say sorry before the world forced it from him, and the code that would always have more doors than anyone could count. He had guarded doors with keys. Now he was guarding futures with knowledge and in a building of glass and reflections, where a company had almost died and then decided to live better. A simple truth settled into the corners like good light. Sometimes the person you push out of the room is the one who knows how to turn off the fire. Sometimes the man you call just a guard is the one who remembers the way through the code you forgot was made by people, not gods. And sometimes, if you're lucky, he's the kind who doesn't ask for a title when it's over. He asks for a Saturday, and you give it to him.